Hi, everyone. Theresa Nutt here, and I am happy to have this opportunity to connect with you and talk about this very important topic we are all dealing with, which is trying to find balance and resilience while navigating a period of very rapid change. A little about me. I am the co director of the Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coaching Program at the University of Minnesota, and I come by training first in nursing and many years in healthcare. And then as time progressed, I was looking for work that allowed me to help people in a preventative way instead of always having people come to me when they were already not feeling well. So, very happy to be doing coaching work because it allows me to work in that arena. And in particular, just want to say one of the reasons I teach at the centers program is it is so holistically oriented, and we really look at people as mind, body, and spirit, not leaving any part of that out as we try and help them optimize their well being. So that's a little about me and my background. So, with my long nursing background, I have been speaking on this topic of resilience for a long time, and it came to light really for me in my own life when I had a couple bouts of burnout as a nurse from many years of working in healthcare. And also, after 9/11, there was just a lot more conversation after a period of time where compassion fatigue and understanding that resilience and burnout were really big things became more aware and available and spoken about in the world. So, as a newer coach and also as a nurse still working in nursing roles, I ended up speaking on that topic of resilience for a long time and compassion fatigue. So, I've been doing it a while. But right now, as we face what we are in our world, it seems like a very timely topic. So great to be here with you. All right. So we're going to dive right in with an opportunity to come to center. So I start all of my classes and all of my activities in the same way. I'm going to invite us to find a place to quiet our own minds, to bring our attention back to ourselves instead of all of the places it tends to be throughout our day. So I invite you, if it's comfortable, to close your eyes or simply soften your gaze and just have it in a fixed position somewhere in the room, whatever is easier. And all I ask is that you start to notice your breathing without needing to change or fix or improve anything. Simply notice. And if your mind gets busy giving you reasons why or things to do or a to-do list or whatever it's going to do, that's okay. We're not going to wrestle it to the ground. We're simply going to notice and bring our attention over and over again to the breath. Taking this time to connect, discover what's happening inside of you. Notice what needs tending. And we can use our breath to send love and kindness to a body part, to an aching heart, to something about our spirit that is feeling not so well. So I invite you to take a couple breaths on your own just to integrate and let things settle. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and bring your attention back to this moment in this place where we're going to share this topic and information that I hope is helpful to you. Thanks for indulging me. One of the things about COVID that I wanted to highlight that wasn't even apparent when I first was asked to speak on this topic is how blurred the lines are. In the past, people could go to work and school and home, even gather and worship in certain ways. And all of that is often happening in different ways. And so there isn't the separation. People aren't sending their children to school in the same way. Their work might not be outside of the home. And so life kind of feels like one blurred line from one thing to the next, which creates a certain amount of stress in and of itself. And we tend to lose our routines. We tend to lose the things we count on, and we tend to lose our separation in a good way where we can sort of, when I'm at home, I can tend to my home. When I'm at school, I can tend to my schoolwork. When I'm at work, I can attend to my work. But now those activities might all be happening in the same place. And so it's a little harder to be more clear focused about any one thing because they are tending to blur together. So we just want to bring attention to really this is a truly interesting and challenging time we're navigating. And so these blurred lines come to mind as I think about that. I want to start with a little research. Of course, I am a faculty at a university, but also it helps us to really think about what the stress response is doing to us so that we can tune in and figure out what our own responses are, why it's so challenging, and hopefully normalize some of what we're all experiencing as we navigate through these times. So, the first is the fight, flight, or freeze response, which is our normal stress response, normal in quotation marks. All of us tend toward one of those. So maybe you find yourself more agitated, more irritated, more annoyed with people. Then probably under stress, you are a fight person. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how your stress is letting you know it's at a high level. If you're like me, I dream of being on the first plane going anywhere. So I am a flight person. I want to just get out of the situation or just leave altogether. So that's how you might know you're a flight person. You might imagine just kind of being able to leave it all behind somehow. And then freeze is really where we are completely immobilized. And that can show up in different ways. We can withdraw from life, from people we care about, from activities we care about. We can become overwhelmed by things that we are not normally overwhelmed by. So freeze can look a few different ways, but it really leads to inactivity around whatever is stressing us. And then I want to talk about this fabulous thing on top of our heads called our brain, and this thing called neuroefficiency, which is the idea in neuroscience that our brains are wired for the fastest route, the thing it knows. Well, here we are being asked to change every 5 seconds, every single day, right? I mean, it's so much rapid change, and our brains don't like that. Our brains say, to get to Z, I must do A, B, and C because that's the path I've always taken. Well, if A, B, and C are not available, it tends to short circuit. And so you will feel the stress of constantly trying to reevaluate the best route because that is not what our brain likes to do. So may we thank our brains for what they're good for and wish that sometimes it wasn't quite so efficient so that it didn't add to the stress we feel when we're asked to navigate a lot of change at once. Obviously, during this time, one of the things I think is so huge about change anyway, but for certain with the COVID-19, is the social implications. You know, when people change, it often makes them feel less of a belonging sense with those they might be in social relationship with. It might impact their normal routines and rhythms with people and activities. And so, right now, not only is that the truth, if people are changing, certain things are being disrupted. And at the same time, there are simply social implications to this thing we're navigating. We can't have the same connections. We can't be in community in the same way. So, it's sort of like social implications times two because it's both sides of it. We can't have our usual coping mechanisms because they are a little bit limited, and at the same time, there are social implications whenever we navigate change. And I'm seeing it with some of my own friends. Some have children in school and some don't. And so some people are trying to balance the whole I'm working from home and my kiddo is doing school from home. And at the same time, suddenly from dawn till dusk, I'm just going. So I'm not able to stay as connected to my social connections, even virtually, because we're just too busy. Or the opposite, right? It can be really isolating for people who don't have families and don't have any connections, and there aren't really good opportunities to get them. So, really looking at that social implications piece as really important. Another is mindset. We all have mindsets. We can't get away without it. And some of us have a more positive mindset, right? Like the whole glass half full versus half empty. And some of us have a less positive mindset. So, stresses like these, we can notice our mindset shift. We might have more negative thinking. We might have more avoidance thinking, like, oh, everything's fine. I'm just going to skip through the tulips, even though a bus is running into the side of my house. We might notice how our mindset is playing into what we're dealing with. So, it's just good to be curious and pay attention to how we cope and manage when we're under stress. Obviously, I think during this time, all of us have fallen prey to, at one point or another, some kinds of unconscious coping. Everything from that wonderful chocolate that just temporarily makes us feel soothed and comforted to, more alcoholism, more worrying. So people watching the news nonstop. I mean, that's all sort of a way to get some control and cope. So just knowing what our coping patterns are that are unconscious and how they show up, and just being willing to pay attention there and notice. And again, be curious with compassion, but also pay attention so that we don't find ourselves going down a road we would rather not. The last piece I like to bring into this is this thing called Western culture. And obviously, I'm a part of it, but we really have a productivity, get things done, keep moving forward culture in the West. And that can be great on some levels, but it also, during times like these, can be very challenging because there is not a clear way forward. There is an incredible amount of uncertainty, and there will be for some time. And so, if we are only comfortable when we have the plan, when we know what to do next, it can be really, really challenging. So, I want to just make note of this. Darn it, this good old Western culture and how it sometimes feeds into our stress response. And here's a chance to look at the signals from your body. So, notice what happens in short term stress. Our body might have some new aches and pains. It's kind of like, oh, this twinges here or that twinges there. It's very common, people having this neck and shoulder tightness, muscle tension, headaches also. Eye twitches. So if suddenly you're noticing your eyes are kind of fluttering in funny ways and they just twitch without anything on your part, can be a sign of fatigue and stress. And then fatigue in general. So just not having energy. It's a very common symptom right now. They're actually sort of talking about the COVID exhaustion after this many months of it. So fatigue is a very, very normal response to ongoing stress that is in the short term, and changes in libido. So all of these normal signals from your body that something isn't quite right and there's some kind of tension in the air. So just wanting to make you aware of that. Then there are signals from your behavior. And this is when stress lasts a little longer. So the anger and agitation, remember the whole fight, flight, or freeze. So the people who tend toward fight when they've had stress for too long get more angry, get more agitated, which can lead to emotional outbursts that you kind of feel out of control about. Then those who are more in the freeze category might start withdrawing from social activities and their relationships that they really count on. And the most common signal that most everyone engages in some way is over or under eating. So just notice if these are symptoms in your own life or really signals from your behavior that are letting you know that stress is lasting and it needs some attention. That's all. When I say these symptoms of stress, it's really just a point of, this is a place where I need some attention. This is where I need to be paying some mind to myself because my body and my behavior are trying to get my attention because my stress level is higher than I know how to manage. That's all it is. And of course, the biggest research now is showing that uninterrupted stress really has some dangerous long-term side effects. And not to be a sensationalist, but we are living in a time when a virus is very present. And so having decreased immunity is not to our benefit. So uninterrupted stress that we're not doing things to manage leads to changes in our immune system. It's important to know. Obviously, it leads to obesity because people tend to eat to soothe, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, so all kinds of medical struggles. And as well, we're seeing it nationwide, the high levels of depression and anxiety when our bodies and our nervous systems do not get a break from the stress. Those are very common side effects of high levels of stress. So I'm going to invite you to just pause for a second and ask yourself, how do you know if your stress level is higher than normal? Is it a body sensation? Does your behavior change? Do you lose motivation? Does your health change? Or is there something else? It's really good to be able to tune in and say, what happens for me when I've been under stress a little too long? So that's the invitation. All right, we're going to switch gears here and talk about resilience. And I want to start with a definition. So, the American Psychological Association talks about resilience. It's an adaptation process. So, we have to be able to adapt when there's adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, and sources of stress. And so, that's really what resilience is, it's our ability to adapt. And another definition really is how you bounce back, move forward, and create a new normal when the unexpected happens. And all of us are in the process of doing that this year several times. Really honestly, we can't always just do it once and be done, but we're having to create new normals and figuring out how to move forward with the circumstances that we're being handed at any given moment. So that's really resilience is not about skipping through the tulips saying everything is great and there are no problems. I want to be really clear about realistic expectations, but it is about our ability to keep moving and to find a new normal when unexpected things happen. And that really, to me, is the priority. So there are 6 strategies in my mind that help you deal with resilience, build resilience, and if you lose your way, kind of a thing, lose your way tongue in cheek, because it's not that serious, but if you find yourself having higher levels of stress, these 6 things tend to have a way to help you shift. And the first is shifting your mindset. So often when we are under stress, we get really spun out thinking about all that's wrong. We worry, we ruminate, we spin things out of control. We can't get a different perspective. Our thinking gets very narrow and very focused on basic survival. So one of the ways you can shift your mindset is to expand and focus on what is right in your world. And most importantly, build self-compassion. Something we don't do enough of in our culture, and it's huge when we're dealing with uncertainty and trauma. So, here are several practices that will help you shift your mindset. The first is gratitude, and there are a number of ways to do a gratitude practice. But I will tell you that people have everything from a gratitude jar, which my friend keeps with her family. She has a few kids and her husband. So they write every day something they're grateful for. And then every weekend on Sunday, they read all the things they're grateful for at Sunday dinner, which touches my heart because my family did the Sunday dinner thing. And so that's really important to me as well. But you can also journal about gratitude at the end of your day or the start of your day, but it really shifts us to focusing on what's right in our world, on what we are grateful for. And that has a neurochemical impact on our body and our well-being. So it is a great way to shift our mindset. And we all have something to be grateful for. I just want to say before I let that topic go, it can be hard to remember, but I think on days like we've had in the last week, sunshine and warmth last week, when it was in the 60s and 70s, people I love, I can really, if I'm desperate to find things, there's always something there. So it doesn't have to be a hard thing to look for. As it relates to self-compassion, there is a scientist whose name is Kristen Neff, and she actually published as part of her doctorate a body of work on this topic of self-compassion. And I think it is so powerful because not only does she write about the theory of it, she writes about practices that are simple and easy to implement. And basically, the bottom line premise is that we all suffer. It's part of the human condition. But rarely in our suffering have we been taught to hold ourselves with kind regard. We've been taught to judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, wish we were different, a number of other things, but we have not been taught to simply hold ourselves with a lot of compassion. So, a self compassion practice is all about really tending to our suffering. So, when we are struggling, to say something like, Teresa, you are suffering. Everyone suffers. It's okay to suffer. What do you need right now while you are suffering? It's just really talk to yourself so kindly. Have some words you will use. There are scripts she offers, but that's the one I use the most often. So come up with some ways to speak kindly to yourself and build compassion when you're struggling. It's really, really helpful when you find yourself in a very anxious state of mind. We often try to push our anxiety away or wish it were different, and that doesn't generally help. But if we instead just use some self-compassion, that anxiety will soften and release. The next is a form of dealing with how things can move. So, this is a theory for how we can move through something showing up in our life. So, we have to adapt. That's item number one. Something has happened in my life. Step number one, I have to adapt. I can't keep doing what I was doing in the same way for whatever reason. So, it's just that mindset of I am willing to adapt. I have to change how I've been doing things. And the second is we have to transform. So, how can I transform my relationship with this topic, with this life circumstance, with whatever it is? How can I transform it to make it more healthy for me? That's really the point. It's really about transforming it so that you are in better relationship with it. And from adapting and transforming, then you can respond in a more positive way. So it's those three steps. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to identify what's going on. I'm going to adapt. I'm going to transform. And then I'm going to figure out how I want to respond. So that's a three-step process you can use to slow your mind down and shift it a little bit from being really terrified and overwhelmed and sometimes not in the most positive state. The next one is just critical in my mind, and this is where I see people really, really struggling. If you are a person who needs a really clear plan, everything laid out, this is a time where having some faith is really important, and we are all challenged to have enough faith for what's showing up. And I think one of the easy steps we can take is to know what's in our control and what is not, and to not worry about the things that are out of our control. That's where rumination happens. We can start focusing on things we have no control over, and we can waste a lot of time and energy trying to have control over something that isn't ours to control. Another is taking perspective. So in coaching, we have these techniques, and it's really interesting. I think I didn't recognize how powerful they were until I found myself giving these kind of resilience presentations a lot in the last 6 months. Is that we tend to get very narrowly focused, as I mentioned before, when we're dealing with something. And so perspective taking is like if I were to look at it from above it, 1,000 feet above it, what would it look like? From an eagle bird eye view, what would it look like? From the left side of it, what would it look like? From the right, from above, from below. And sometimes to help get new perspectives, we need to ask good, trusted friends and family, really. How are you thinking about this? What are you trying? What makes sense to you? So, perspective taking can happen in a number of ways, but it helps us get from that very narrow, very frightened place that we often get to a broader, more curious, more open way of relating to something. And the last thing I want to talk about are affirmations. They are a great way to shift our mindset. And I think we have to be careful about how we use them. So there's a lot of good information out there about using affirmations. And they should, first of all, always be in the present tense. And sort of like this, I am full of life. I am whatever it is. So really present moment, how you wish to feel, etc. What I will say about them that is not helpful and how they can sort of become the opposite of a good tool is when we use them like to be sunshine and roses when we just need to step one step away from the challenge we're facing. So, for instance, I am full of life. If I was just diagnosed with cancer, that might be too far to jump. But I could say, I am willing to feel healthy again, right? Or something like take incremental steps. forward, to move toward the state of mind we want to be in versus trying to make a leap that we just can't even believe at all. So, affirmations can work best if they're incremental, and especially during this time, don't use them as some kind of self punishment for how you should have a more positive mindset than you do. But if they help you, if it helps you to read positive, uplifting affirmations, and you can use them to send kindness to you and make you feel your mind should always, this is how you know you're shifting your mindset. You should feel relief and you should feel kind of an open spaciousness. Anything that you're doing that doesn't create that is not the right practice for how you're feeling at that time. So play with them, see what really works for you. Another tool that I think is part of mindfulness, but just really in general, we are so technology laden these days, for lack of a better terminology, because it's so part of every part of our life. So we have our kiddos on Zoom during the day doing part of their classwork if they're doing virtual learning. We have ourselves on virtual meetings. We have our phones, etc. Like there's so much connection to external resources. We are watching television for news and information, etc. So all of that takes us out of the present moment. It's often future focused or past focused. But when we get right here in the moment, which is why I did the centering in the beginning, it makes it really hard to ruminate and get caught in those cycles of worry and wonder and what ifs. And there are some great ways we can do it. So, again, some practices: get out in nature and really notice your surroundings. Notice the trees or the birds singing or the geese honking. It's about that time when they will be migrating. Whatever it is, we can pay attention to things in nature in an open, curious fashion, and that will get us in the present moment. We can also do grounding and centering, and as I had done from the very beginning, a few breaths can be a great way to just get really present. Just putting your hand on your heart and asking yourself, how is it I'm doing right now? What am I feeling? What am I needing? How am I doing that? Just reconnecting with yourself, making space for that throughout your day. And then there's this thing called heart math. And if you've heard anything about it or not, I'll just give you a quick, brief overview. The premise really is that scientists realized that for all of the research we have about how many signals our brain gives out, our hearts actually send out far more signals than our brain. And so the thing that heart math does is it helps our brain and our heart sync up those signals that they're sending out and create something called coherence. So, with that in mind, we're going to do a quick technique called the quick coherence technique, which is the most basic one. You can use it no matter what's going on to just help yourself get to a place of more relaxation. So, I'm going to put my hand on my heart. That helps me tune in, whatever works for you. And all I invite you to do is, again, close your eyes or soften your gaze to just shut down some of the visual stimulation and just start breathing in and out as if you're breathing right in and out through your heart. And as you're breathing in and out through your heart, I invite you to think of one time in your life where you felt joy, appreciation, excitement, some kind of enthusiastic response from yourself. So bring that event to mind and tune into who you were with, what you were doing, if there were any smells or tastes, what you were seeing. Get all of your senses involved and remember as much as you can. And breathe in that joy, appreciation, love, whatever you're feeling, right in and out through your heart. So we're going to breathe in that feeling. And then just see before you open your eyes or return your gaze, see if you notice any differences in your body after just taking a little time to tune into that experience. And most people, when I'm doing this live, I get to see the smiles on their faces or some kind of physical symptom of their shift in mindset and their presence with themselves. So it's really fun to see. But you should feel some relief, elation, some kind of return to a more joyful, easy state. So that's heart math, another process or practice for helping in those moments. The last is my favorite, only because we do so many things throughout our day that we do very mindlessly. We just go about doing them. We don't think a lot about it. And we have these opportunities to do what I call capitalize on transitions. So everything from getting up and brushing your teeth to having your morning coffee or tea, whatever you do throughout the day, we often are creatures of habit. So we do some things pretty routinely. And we can do those very mindlessly, or we can use them to tune into ourselves. So perhaps when you're brushing your teeth, you might just say, how am I feeling? Really, how am I feeling this morning? Is there anything that needs attending to in my life, right? It's just little touch bases with ourselves throughout our day. Some people choose to use transitions like when we're on the computer. For me, I'm on the computer sometimes what I call a Zoom zombie, 12 hours of it in a day with meetings and teaching and etc. And so I can just every hour, I'll try to leave meetings a few minutes early uh, to just get up and move, do a few jumping jacks or just stretch or, just close my eyes for a minute. This is one of my favorite. Just put your hand on the bridge of your nose and just tip your head down so that it has a break from all of the visual stimulation. And then just breathe for a few breaths and let your nervous system get a break from all the incoming information, visually and otherwise. So that's a great way to capitalize on transition. So there are a number of ways you can use your transitions with a little more mindfulness to get more connected to the present moment in yourself. So one of my favorite hacks for how to do that. And then back to the whole unplugging and really breathing deeply. The other thing that obviously when we're moving from one thing to the other without a lot of breaks, it's easy not to breathe and really breathe and nourish your cells when you breathe. So I like to remind people that we actually have breathing practices that help us energize. Like, think about when you're excited. How do you breathe? Like, oh, yeah, I'm excited. And my eyes get a little worked up, and I can feel like my breath comes in a little faster. And so you can breathe like you're excited. How would you breathe if you were excited? You can also breathe. There are a couple of points. Tapping on your chest right here has a way of just like giving you extra energy. So you can breathe and tap, 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 which, by the way, if you tap right here, it also boosts your immune system. So you're getting a twofer. But if the longer you tap, you start to feel your cells kind of wake up in that area. And there's actually a qigong. You can tap right on your arms and etc. So tapping and breathing is a great way to kind of energize. And the other is you can tap on top of your head. This happens to be an acupressure point on the back of your head that if you tap on it, it will give you energy and stimulate your mind to kind of get a second wind. So that's another great way to breathe and energize. So those are a few quick techniques for breathing to energize because sometimes we need a little energy to get through our long, long days that are going on right now. Obviously, the other ways to breathe are to breathe to calm. And one of the most common that I teach most everyone that I teach breathing techniques to is to breathe in calm. So you on the in breath, you just think calm and breathe in. And then on the out breath, you breathe out any tension. And so it's just a way to, I'm going to breathe in some calm. I'm going to breathe out all the tension. And it can be a way to just regulate. Another way to breathe in relaxation or to move toward calming is to make your out breath slightly longer than the breath in. So you might breathe in for the count of 4 and breathe out for the count of 5 or 6. And that tells your nervous system, hey, we can be calm, we're safe, we're okay. So these are just ways to work with your nervous system to either calm it or give it a little energy. The other thing I like to talk about right now, it's so challenging, right? We have so much screen time during the day, and often a lot of us have used television in the evening to relax. And it can be hard in this day and age with all the screen time to find the same level of relaxation with more screen time. Our body kind of gets a little burned out on it, honestly. And so having ways to find comfort, peace, and relaxation that might look different than more screen time. I myself have this 8 p.m. cup of tea date with myself where it's just like I just sort of shut everything down. I make a cup of tea and I just sit quietly and drink it and just let everything start to relax and move toward bedtime. So that is my personal practice that really works for me. I also tend to walk first thing in the morning before the world wakes up too much. At 6:30 in the morning is my favorite time because it's early and the world's still pretty quiet. 5:30, 6:30, anywhere in there. So just finding little places where we can create comfort, peace, and relaxation. And I would say if you have children, teaching them the same, because I think all of this screen time is also hard on their nervous system. So there might be something you can do as a family. I just gave this presentation last week to a group of 125, and the gentleman at the end said, "Yeah, I think, I'm going to make my tea at 8, and then my little buddy, I'm going to make him some hot chocolate, and we're going to chill and drink our hot drinks together." So I think our kiddos need to see a good example as well. So it was fun to hear his story. Other people are doing things like a few gentle yoga stretches in the evening to just let their bodies and minds start to relax. So whatever it is for you, finding that right thing. And as I mentioned, taking moments to rest and recharge. When we go from thing to thing to thing, we don't give ourselves any downtime. And so whether that's, scheduling in a little brief walk on your lunch break or whatever it is, finding little periods that allow you to rest and recharge throughout your day so you're not so exhausted at the end of it. The last little, I feel so mother hen when I say it, but we really do have to unplug from electronics, even if it's just for a short period of time. There's a lot of research about the challenges of having our minds so visually stimulated all the time. And so whatever you can do to make a little space between you and your electronics a couple of times a day will really, really help you stay healthy and well. So the invitation is make room, unplug, even if it's just 60 seconds every hour where put your fingers on the bridge of your nose, tip your head down, and sort of shut everything down just while you take a couple of breaths and then come back to it. Give yourselves a chance to rest and recharge. So I happen to be a highly sensitive person, so this next one is near and dear to my heart, but I think one thing we have not been so great about is knowing what to do with all of our emotions. And right now there are a lot of emotions that are absolutely normal as we navigate this level of uncertainty, civil unrest, changes due to the election, et cetera. There's so much that's at stake right now that has got people concerned, et cetera. And so we feel a lot of emotions. And generally, our culture is not terribly great at knowing what to do about them. So I'm going to welcome you to recognize, welcome, and soften to your emotions. And part of that is just allowing and making space for them. So whether that is you having a trusted friend or family member that you can talk to about how you're feeling during this time. I know the number of people who are working with health coaches and counselors, and I'm sure um, priests and rabbis and spiritual leaders has gone up because people need a place to do this very thing. So make space for it. Have a way for you to actually work with your emotions and process them. Emotions are meant to move. Emotions are meant to just, their energy that need to move through us. And we often have been taught to sort of push them down or away, ignore them, suppress them. And they always come out sideways when we do that. So if we can simply make room for them, find our way to process them, whether, again, that's talking to a trusted person or writing in your journal or whatever it is. Some people find running or something else a great way to let the emotions move. Maybe time in the shower. I can't say, everyone's different, but really consciously finding a way to process is a great way to deal with emotions. And then the invitation in this time of challenges and overwhelming anxiety and depression as a nation, I just invite you to get support if you need it, to not suffer in silence, to not think somehow you are weak, if you are not toughing it out on your own, those kind of things are dangerous and they end, in sad stories that none of us want to hear. So, getting support, getting counseling, getting help, talking to a friend or family member, it's all really, really healthy, strong human behavior. So, I want to encourage that. The last part is that as we tend to get really emotional, we often withdraw and we don't stay as connected to the people we love or the things that bring us joy. And so, one great way to make sure our emotions matter is to stay connected with others and stay connected with the things that matter to us. It's a great way to take care of our emotional well being. So, this next one is a review of the basics, but it's often the first thing to go when the stress level is really high. And I would also say it's often the first thing to go when we feel so overwhelmed that we don't know where to start. But if we reintroduce it, it will help us feel the best the quickest. It's just a fast way to get ourselves back on track. So make self care a priority, not an afterthought. And some of the common ways are movement, and they don't have to be running 10 miles. I have this guy running just because it's great graphics, right? But it could be a walk around the block. So for me, I'm going to introduce my own pattern of movement. I walk every morning. That really helps me get grounded and centered. And then I also do something every afternoon. So I need to move at certain times in the day so that I can count on it. So my body gets a break from the constant screen time and sitting and etc. Nutrient-rich food. I don't think any of us need more information about good diets, but often in a hustle and bustle, stressful place, we don't make good food choices. And so it's just an opportunity to, as much as possible, introduce foods that are nutrient-rich, that are giving our cells the nutrition they need to stay healthy and well. That's really the point of it. The other is the basics of affection and connection. And here we are in a time when socially we have to be pretty distanced for our own well being. And so, how we get that affection and connection might look different. Maybe it's pets. I happen to have a big old 90-pound lovely dog who is part of my affection and connection formula. And, we might have to do virtual connection, but really finding ways to stay connected. Giving yourself a hug is not a bad thing. It will actually send the very same signals. So, embracing yourself, giving some kindness to yourself, really great. Virtual hugs, I happen to do them with my 18 nieces and nephews. Kind of love it as a way to send some love, even though it's not physical. We can each hug ourselves and pretend the other person is with us. So, lots of ways, but it's really important that we get that need for affection and connection met. Sleep hygiene is one of the big things that's become a symptom during this time, and really, understandably so, the increased screen time makes it really hard for our minds to shut down and go to sleep at night. And in general, the just no transitions during the day means our bodies are kind of like, well, I'm just going from thing to thing to thing. So harder to actually shut down and go to sleep at night. So sleep hygiene is critical. Whatever you can do to have like maybe you shut down the screens at 9 so you can go to bed at 10 or 10:30, but you want to give your body like an hour of downtime before you transition into sleep. So just thinking about what that might look like. Maybe it's a cup of tea, maybe it's reading a story to your kiddos, whatever it is, starting to tell your body and mind that it can slow down, that you are going to get to bed at a reasonable hour. All of these things that we just need to pay attention to will really make a difference in your stress level, in your cortisol levels, which affect your brain chemistry, etc. So it's really, sleep is probably one of the most critical things right now. And with that in mind, it's a great segue into routines and rhythms. So part of the blurred lines is that we've lost some of our common routines, like I get up at a certain time and I go to work, or I get my kiddos on the bus. Some of those routines have gone away. And so whatever we can do to create them, they tell our nervous system that things are okay. So some level of predictability is really, really helpful to our nervous system. So have whatever routines and rhythms you can find that help your nervous system have something to count on, especially in times of high levels of uncertainty. Another is this hard one for us, this vulnerability of being willing to say when we're scared, when we need some attention, when we need help, all of the things that we are not always great at doing in our independent Western mind culture. So, receiving is critical. Giving and receiving is so powerful for our overall well being, and taking care of that is just crucially important. Another thing that is maybe more important than ever, although sleep tops the list, the second is our environment. If everything is combined and we have these blurred lines between home, work, and school, one environment often has to meet all of those needs, and it can be hard to keep our focus on one part of it when the others are bleeding in. So, whatever we can do to make our environment support us, nurture us, provide refuge, be calm and caring is really, really helpful. Another is to make time to check in with yourself throughout your day. That's really what's important. So, times, as I had mentioned, just put your hand on your heart, check in, or just really take a couple breaths and just close your eyes and say, how am I doing right now? We need opportunities to connect back in with ourselves. Take breaks from all the screen time, take breaks from constantly being on. If your work, family, and home and school for your child is all in one big fell swoop, you might need a little break throughout the day to just downshift for a minute. Doesn't have to take long. The last thing that is I'm hearing more and more from people is really helping them navigate these times is staying attentive to meaning and purpose, because it can feel pretty daunting right now to get through the days, to deal with all the demands, and to try and have our stress under some kind of level of reason. And what's helping people do that is to really pay attention. What has meaning and purpose for me in my life? What am I doing to take action toward that, even if what I have to do looks different? For instance, for me, what has meaning and purpose is family. And so I do things, even on Zoom, to stay connected with my family because that feeds my sense of purpose and what brings me meaning. So, whatever that is for you, make time for it. Find ways to feed and nurture what brings you meaning and purpose. It will help navigate these challenging days. The last is perhaps one of my favorite, and that is making time for play and joy. It can be easy to feel like we're in a grind. And one of the things that very quickly fuels your spirit is finding time to play and finding ways to notice joy. So, laughing with your colleagues or people you're close to, looking for moments that light you up and really noticing them. And I've been really diligent about that, like a beautiful cardinal sitting next to the berries left on a tree. Oh, look at the color. It's so beautiful. Really noticing it, really paying attention, which leads to inspiration and beauty. Maybe you're a word person who loves quotes. So finding quotes that really speak to you, or little pieces of art or pictures of beauty. I know a couple of people who've been doing COVID challenges, like every day, go take a picture of something on your phone that you think is beautiful. And so it's just a way to turn our attention toward something that lights us up, something that brings us beauty or joy or inspiration. I think another big one right now is to celebrate the little wins. Things are looking challenging, and so we can forget the little things that go well. But actually stopping to celebrate them is a great way to bring joy into your life. Make time to do the things you love. So, in this dawn till dusk kind of blurred line, it can be easy to not make time for the things that we truly love, when indeed that really can lift your spirits and help you keep going. And then creative outlets and self expression. So, again, this need to express ourselves, and it can be so many ways. I've been teaching about creativity for a number of years, and people often have this confusion that if you are creative, you must be an artist or a singer or something. But creativity can be how you advocate for a cause you believe in. It can be how you help out at your church. It can be so many things. It can be how you raise your family. But places where you can express yourself fully and use your creativity to innovate and play and be inspired and full of life. Those are all things that are really meaningful. So find creative outlets that allow you to be all of you. It's really, really important. So I'm going to pause again. I love audience participation and ask you to just sit and say, what new resilience practice can I commit to today Just take a moment and say, is there one I would like to commit to? You have so many choices. It's been a big smorgasbord. All right. And if you feel brave, maybe you will tell someone what you're committing to. So I want to leave you with some resources to, if you want to take anything further. One of my favorite books right now that I'm really using in this time of challenge is Joy in Every Moment. And it's little mindful exercises that help you find wonder and joy in ordinary life. And so there are little prompts. You can just open a page, random page, and follow the prompt and just do something to bring your attention to what's joyful in the moment. The DPS is for those who don't know how to receive and ask for what they're really needing. So that's really about the lost art of true receiving. It's a beautiful book and it's got great practices. The self-compassion book I mentioned. So again, this is small practices you can use to build self-compassion. Two of my authors that I really follow is Matt Kahn talks a lot about loving whatever arises instead of always fighting ourselves. And so his book, Whatever Arises, Love That, has some great activities to do to really, again, build our self-compassion, but also just learn to work with life in a trusting way instead of always fighting what's happening and being frustrated with what's arising. And then one of the coaches that I trained with early on in my career, Cheryl Richardson, wrote this beautiful book. It's called The Art of Extreme Self-Care. And it has 12 things you can do. So it's the premise of the book is that you would do one each month. And then at the end of the 12 months, you will have implemented these different self-care practices that will really help you deepen your relationship with yourself. So that's a great book. And she also wrote it when her husband was really ill in it, and it had some great tips for paying attention to how we tend to behave when we feel really stressed and what we need to do instead of what our default would tell us to do. So I think that's really, really helpful. Another book, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, is from the Buddhist tradition. And I mention it only because she is so great at talking about how we often want to get away from what's uncomfortable, when instead what we need to do is learn how to sit with ourselves when things fall apart and not need it to be different, not need ourselves to be different, not need the circumstance to be different, but to really learn how to sit in the middle with all of it. And so that practice has really informed my life. And then William Bridges is the grandfather, really, of this whole area of transitions and how we navigate them. And so if you're struggling with some of the transitions you are making, he has some great steps for how we can think about and work through transitions. That's another topic I speak on pretty often. And then there's some research here. So if there are some things you want to look up, there's brain and behavior research about mental health. Um, there's an article by Ecology and Society Journal with information about what resilience thinking really is. Then the New York University has this Emotional Brain Institute, which is fantastic stress information and some of the neuroscience. And then the last thing I wanted to offer is that as part of the center within the Early Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing, as part of their mission, what they have chosen to do is create a COVID-19 resource page. And in there are a number of things for community members. We have a separate section for students and a separate section for faculty. So there are a bunch of resources in there if you want more mindfulness practices, if you're dealing with a specific thing that you want some support with. Just has beautiful resources on a number of practices, tips, and techniques that will support you during this time. So I want to make sure you know about that. And I will leave you with this Wayne Dyer quote: "You can't always control what goes on outside, but you can always control what happens inside." And so with that, I leave you sending you blessings, hoping that you are doing what you can to be whole, healthy, and well, staying connected, finding ways to stay connected to those you care about, to your faith, to your beliefs that support and nurture you and keep you well. Take care of your emotional well-being, your physical well-being. And I believe, this is my belief, my soapbox, that when we all do our best to stay healthy and well, we naturally care well for those around us. And so my desire in sharing this presentation is that you get a lot of new information about how you can take amazing care of yourself so that those in your life can be touched by you in new and inspiring ways. May you all be blessed as we navigate this time. Thank you so much.